A single duck is capable of laying more than 300 eggs in a single year. These are eggs that typically sell for double the price that chicken eggs fetch at the local farmer's market. Furthermore, the bird that produced them likely cost you significantly less in terms of feed and veterinary expenses, while continuing to remain productive for many years after your best performing hen has already quit. Most people never have the opportunity to hear that. Instead, they hear that ducks are messy animals. They hear that ducks are loud. They hear that ducks absolutely require a pond to survive. None of that is actually true, or at least none of it provides the complete story. Here is what nobody ever talks about. Duck eggs can sell for anywhere from $6 to $12 per dozen. Duck meat brings in 2 to 4 times the price of chicken per pound. And while your average laying hen starts to fade after only 18 months, a quality duck keeps going strong for 6, 7, or even 8 years. That fundamentally changes the financial math on everything. However, not every duck breed is worth your time or investment. Some of these specific breeds will put real money into your pocket. One breed at the very end of this list will actually drain it. And if you happen to pick the wrong one, you won't just lose your money. You will lose your sleep because it never ever stops quacking. Let's discuss the 11 duck breeds that actually pay for themselves and the one that never will. If you only had enough room for one single breed of duck on your property, this is the one that most experienced producers would tell you to start with. The Khaki Campbell holds a laying record that puts every chicken breed on notice. 346 eggs in 365 days. That is not a guess or an estimate. That number was officially documented in controlled testing, and it was not a fluke. Dutch farmers back in the 1920s routinely averaged 335 eggs per bird across massive flocks of 50,000. These were not pampered showbirds either. They were working animals fed on cheap bycatch fish from the Zuiderzee. A typical well-managed Campbell today still puts up 250 to 300 eggs a year. Compare that to a production Leghorn, which peaks around 280 and then falls off a cliff after the second year. The Campbell keeps laying at a strong clip for 3 to 4 seasons. Some keepers even report solid production into year 6. Now here is where the profit math gets interesting. A Campbell hen weighs about 4 pounds. She does not eat much. On good pasture, she will forage for 50 to 70% of her own diet, eating bugs, slugs, weed seeds, and whatever else she can find. That drops your feed cost per bird to somewhere around $18 to $30 a year. At 300 eggs per year sold at $8 a dozen, one bird brings in roughly $200. Subtract your feed cost and you are looking at $170 in profit from a single duck that weighs less than a house cat. There is a management advantage too. Ducks lay early, almost always before dawn. You walk out in the morning, collect your eggs in one pass, and let the flock out. There is no checking nest boxes 3 times a day, like you do with hens that lay on their own schedule. The breed's name has a story behind it worth knowing. Adele Campbell developed this duck in England in the late 1800s by crossing Indian runners, roans, and wild mallards. When she got the color she wanted, a warm brownish khaki, she named it after the British Army uniform color during the Boer War. That was smart marketing even back then. One honest note, Campbells are not a cuddly bird. They are nervous and alert, and they would much rather be working the pasture than sitting in your lap. That is not a flaw. That is the personality of a bird bred for output, not affection. If your goal is filling an egg basket and building a customer list at the farmer's market, the Khaki Campbell is the foundation. Everything else on this list is a variation on a theme, but this is where the money starts. You will know an Indian runner the second you see one. It stands bolt upright like a wine bottle on legs. It moves fast with purpose, like it is late for something important. And in a way, it is. This duck was born to work. Indian runners have been doing pest control for over 2,000 years. Ancient temple carvings on the island of Java show runner-type ducks being herded through rice paddies with bamboo poles. Farmers would march flocks of hundreds through their fields, letting the ducks eat every slug, snail, and insect larvae in their path. The fields came out clean. No chemicals were used. No labor was needed beyond a kid with a stick. That same system works on your property today. If you grow vegetables, berries, or fruit, slugs and snails are your enemy, and most poultry won't touch them reliably. Chickens scratch, they dig up your seedlings, scatter your mulch, and damage your topsoil. Runners do not scratch. They probe the surface with their bills. They eat the pest and leave the plant alone. South Africa's Vergenoeg wine estate runs a flock of Indian runners through their vineyards. The ducks reduced pesticide use so dramatically that the farm earned recognition from the World Wildlife Fund. That is not a backyard experiment. That is commercial-scale pest control powered by a 4-pound bird. And the name is misleading, by the way. Indian runners are not from India. The name came from 19th century European confusion between India and the East Indies. These ducks actually come from the Indonesian islands of Java, Lombok, and Bali. Their unique upright posture comes from a genetically distinct elongated thigh bone that no other domestic duck has. Now, you are not sacrificing egg production for garden duty. A good utility strain runner female lays 150 to 250 eggs per year. Some push past 280. The eggs often come in beautiful pastel green and blue-green shells. That matters at a farm stand because color sells. At only 3 to 4 pounds, runners eat very little. On active pasture, they can source 50 to 75% of their own food. They almost never go broody, which means they keep laying instead of sitting on a nest for weeks. The trade-off? They are flighty and can be skittish. They are not the best bird for kids, and their tiny carcass means they are worthless as meat birds. But if you think of the Indian runner as a tool rather than just livestock, the value becomes obvious. It protects your garden, reduces your pest control costs, lays eggs you can sell at a premium, and feeds itself most of the year. That is not a pet. That is an employee. This breed exists because of a genetic accident and nearly disappeared because of a fox. In 1949, a man named Leslie Bonnet, a retired RAF group captain living in Wales, noticed 2 unusually pale ducklings in his flock of khaki Campbells. Instead of culling them, he bred from them. Those 2 birds became the foundation of the Welsh Harlequin, the only true Welsh duck breed ever developed. Then a fox wiped out nearly his entire flock. The breed survived only because one amateur breeder, Edward Grayson, happened to have kept a few birds. When the Welsh Harlequin reached America, the population shrank to just 2 small flocks by 1980. It was rescued by fresh imports in 1982. This breed has nearly gone extinct twice. That history matters because it tells you something about the people who keep this duck. They are committed and they keep it for good reasons. The Welsh Harlequin has a feature that saves beginners enormous time and money. At hatch, you can sex the ducklings with 85 to 90% accuracy just by looking at their bill color. Males have darker bills. Females have lighter bills with a dark spot. That window lasts only a few days, but if you catch it, you know what you've got before you've spent a dime on feed. Try doing that with chicken chicks. You either pay for professional sexing or you wait weeks and hope. Production-wise, utility strains lay 200 to 300 eggs per year. The eggs weigh 75 to 85 grams, which is large by any standard, with white to cream shells. At 4.5 to 5.5 pounds, the Harlequin is a genuine dual-purpose bird. The meat is lean and plucks almost as cleanly as a white-feathered bird, which matters if you are processing at home. But here is the trait that makes the Welsh Harlequin different from most high-production breeds. It still has a strong maternal instinct. Many hens will go broody, sit on their eggs, and hatch their own ducklings successfully. That means no incubator, no electricity bill for hatching, and no intervention. For anyone trying to build a self-sustaining flock where the birds replace themselves without you buying new stock every year, that trait is worth more than an extra 20 eggs per season. They are also calm, curious, and good with children. That combination of temperament, production, self-sufficiency, and beauty makes the Welsh Harlequin probably the best all-around starter duck for someone who has never kept waterfowl before. Just know that finding quality breeding stock takes effort. This is still a rare breed, but once you have them, they tend to keep themselves going. No 2 Anconas look the same. Their broken black and white mottled plumage is as unique to each bird as a fingerprint. People compare them to Holstein cows, and like Holsteins, they are working animals that happen to be beautiful. This breed has a confusing origin. For decades, everyone assumed it was British. Then a 2013 investigation revealed the Ancona was actually developed by a man named W.J. Word in New York around 1913. By the year 2000, fewer than 125 breeding Anconas existed in the entire United States. Conservation efforts have since pushed that number to roughly 1,000 to 1,500 breeding pairs, but it is still a rare duck. That rarity is your opportunity. Anconas lay 210 to 280 eggs per year, and here is what makes them a farm stand goldmine. A single flock can produce eggs in white, cream, blue, blue-green, and even spotted shells. You don't need to keep 5 breeds to have a colorful egg display. One breed does it all. At 6 to 7 pounds, the Ancona has real meat value too. The flesh is leaner and more flavorful than Pekin, and birds reach about 6 pounds in roughly 9 weeks. That is fast for a heritage breed, but the real economic advantage is foraging ability. Give Anconas access to decent pasture and a water source, and they will source a significant portion of their own nutrition from the land. That drives your feed cost per egg way down compared to breeds that stand around the feeder all day waiting to be served. Their mottled feathering gives them another practical edge that most people overlook. Against a background of grass, dirt, and dappled sunlight, a mottled duck is much harder for hawks and eagles to spot than a solid white one. It is natural camouflage. If you free range without overhead cover, that matters. Anconas handle temperature swings well. They tolerate both heat and cold without drama. They are calm, friendly, and adapt to different management styles, whether you are running a rotational grazing system or just letting them work a backyard. The honest downside is availability. Finding quality Ancona stock takes patience. Most major hatcheries don't carry them. You will probably need to connect with a heritage breed, conservator, or a specialty breeder. And because the gene pool is still small, you will want to be thoughtful about your breeding pairs to avoid inbreeding. But if you can get your hands on good stock, the Ancona gives you something most breeds can't: colorful eggs, solid meat, efficient foraging, predator camouflage, and a bird that genuinely earns its keep without constant input. For a homestead trying to do more with less, that is a hard combination to beat. The magpie duck was built for efficiency. Developed after World War I in Wales and Yorkshire, a time when feed was scarce and every animal had to justify its keep, this breed learned to thrive on very little. How little? Magpies can source roughly 2/3 of their own dietary needs through foraging. That is one of the highest self-sufficiency rates of any domestic duck. On a small farm with decent pasture, that translates directly into lower feed bills and better margins. They produce 220 to 290 eggs per year. Not quite Campbell numbers, but strong enough to build a business on. And the eggs come in a mix of shell colors: white, cream, and sometimes greenish blue, which gives you variety at the market without keeping multiple breeds. At 4.5 to 6 pounds, the magpie is a genuine dual-purpose bird. The Livestock Conservancy describes its meat as gourmet quality. And because the breed has a light-colored underbelly, carcasses pick clean during processing. If you've ever plucked a dark-feathered duck and dealt with visible pin feathers, you know that is a real advantage. Magpies are also one of the longer-lived duck breeds. 9 to 12 years is not unusual. That means more productive seasons from each bird before you need to replace it. Over a decade, that longevity compounds into a significant cost advantage. There is a lesser-known agricultural benefit too. Magpies are effective at eliminating liver fluke infestations in livestock pastures. If you run cattle, sheep, or goats, a flock of magpies working the same ground can reduce a parasite that costs livestock producers real money every year. The breed is genuinely rare. The United Nations estimated only 60 to 100 total magpie ducks existed worldwide in 2002. Numbers have recovered somewhat, but you are still looking at a small breeding population. That scarcity means finding stock takes effort, but it also means you will face less competition if you decide to breed and sell them. Magpies are quiet, hardy in all climates, and easy to manage. They are not flashy. They don't have a dramatic backstory or a viral trait like black eggs. They just show up every day, eat less than almost any other duck their size, and produce consistently. Sometimes the most profitable animal on a farm isn't the most exciting one. It is the one that costs the least to keep while still delivering solid, reliable output. That is the magpie. Every duck on this list so far has been a smart choice for a small farm, but the pekin is the reason duck farming is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Over 95% of all duck meat produced in the United States comes from this single breed. The origin story is almost unbelievable. In 1872, a man named James Palmer loaded 15 white ducks onto a ship in Shanghai. The voyage took 124 days. Only 9 birds survived. Palmer shipped 5 of those to a buyer on the East Coast. Those 5 were eaten before they arrived. The remaining 4 ducks became the genetic foundation of every American pekin alive today. 4 birds, billions of dollars of industry. Modern commercial pekins reach 7.5 pounds in just 6 weeks. Their feed conversion ratio, the amount of food it takes to produce a pound of body weight, is as low as 1.88 to 1.92. That is competitive with Cornish cross-broiler chickens. No heritage breed comes close. For a small producer, that speed means fast cash flow. You buy ducklings, raise them for 6 to 8 weeks, and you've got a market-ready bird. Whole pastured duck sells for $8 to $12 a pound at retail. Duck breast fillets wholesale at over $19 a pound. Even the fat, rendered duck fat, brings $15 to $23 a pound at specialty stores. That is the kind of pricing that turns a small operation into a real business. Pekins aren't just meat birds either. Utility lines lay 150 to 200 eggs per year, and those eggs are extra large, 90 to 100 grams each. They are calm, handle confinement well, and their white feathers produce a clean carcass with no visible pin feathers. That matters to customers and restaurants. But I'm going to be honest about the trade-offs. Pekins are terrible foragers. They will source maybe 10 to 20% of their diet from pasture. The rest comes from the feed bag, which means higher ongoing costs compared to a breed like the magpie or Ancona. They almost never go broody, so you will need an incubator, or you will be buying ducklings every cycle. And the meat is fattier than Muscovy, which some customers prefer and others don't. They are also not the bird for someone who wants a low-maintenance backyard flock. Pekins are big. They eat a lot and they produce a lot of waste. They are a production animal, and they work best when you treat them like one. But if your goal is to build a duck meat business, selling whole birds, parts, or value-added products like duck confit and rendered fat, the pekin gives you the fastest, most predictable path to revenue. There is a reason the industry chose this breed. The numbers work. Here is a fact that surprises almost everyone. The Muscovy is not a true duck. It belongs to a completely different genus, Carina, not Anas. Every other breed on this list descends from the wild mallard. The Muscovy does not. If you cross a Muscovy with any mallard-derived duck, the offspring are sterile. That is how different they are genetically. This isn't a trivia point. That genetic separation is exactly what gives the Muscovy traits no other domestic duck can match. Start with noise, or rather the lack of it. Muscovies don't quack at all. Males produce a low hiss. Females make a soft trilling sound. If you have neighbors or you just want peace on your property, this matters enormously. Most duck breeds are loud enough to generate complaints. A Muscovy flock sounds like a gentle breeze compared to a flock of Campbells. Now the meat. Muscovy breast meat is 98% lean with 50% less skin fat than other ducks, and 50% more breast meat proportionally. It does not taste like duck. People compare it to veal or lean beef. That is a completely different market than fatty pekin. Whole Muscovy commands $8 to $12 a pound at retail. As foragers, they are elite. Muscovies eat flies, sometimes catching them mid-air, along with mosquitoes, ticks, cockroaches, and reportedly even mice. Some homesteaders report that their Muscovies are nearly self-sufficient during summer, pulling most of their nutrition from the land and whatever pests they can hunt. Then there is the maternal instinct. Muscovy hens are among the best mothers in all of domestic poultry. A good hen will sit on 12 to 20 eggs for the full 35-day incubation. That is a week longer than other ducks, and then she will raise the ducklings for 10 to 12 weeks. No incubator, no heat lamp, no intervention. She handles it. The Muscovy is also the only domestic duck that perches. It roosts in trees, sits on fence posts, and uses elevated structures like a chicken would. That gives it better predator avoidance than any ground-sleeping duck. They wag their tails like dogs when they are happy. The name Muscovy has nothing to do with Moscow. It comes from the musky scent produced by glands near the tail. Now the honest trade-offs. Muscovies grow slowly, 12 to 16 weeks to harvest compared to 6 for a pekin. Drakes get big, 10 to 15 pounds, while hens stay at 6 to 8. That extreme size difference is unusual and can complicate breeding. They can fly, so you will need to clip wings or provide covered runs. Males can be aggressive during mating season, and their facial caruncles, those red fleshy patches, are susceptible to frostbite in extreme cold. But for a homesteader who wants a quiet, self-sufficient bird that controls pests, raises its own young, and produces premium lean meat without constant input, the muscovy might be the most valuable animal you can keep, not just among ducks, but among all poultry. If I told you there is a duck that lays jet black eggs, you would probably think I was making it up. But the cayuga does exactly that, and it is not a gimmick. It is a genuine biological phenomenon that can put serious money in your pocket. Early in the laying season, cayuga hens produce eggs coated in a dark charcoal black pigment. As the weeks go on, that color gradually lightens. Charcoal to gray, gray to olive, olive to blue-green, and eventually to white. The pigment is applied to the shell surface just moments before the egg is laid. If you rub a fresh cayuga egg with a damp cloth, some of the color actually comes off. The shell underneath is white. Now think about what that means at a farmer's market. You set out a carton of eggs that range from black to gray to olive to green. Nobody walks past that display. Nobody. People stop. They ask questions. They pull out their phones. And they pay a premium because they've never seen anything like it. That is the cayuga's superpower, not volume. It lays 100 to 180 eggs per year, which is modest. But the perceived value of those eggs is dramatically higher than a standard white or brown egg. When your product creates that kind of curiosity, you've moved beyond commodity pricing into experience pricing. The bird itself is stunning. Deep black plumage with an iridescent beetle green and purple sheen that catches sunlight like polished metal. As the duck ages, something strange happens. The black feathers gradually get replaced by white ones. A very old cayuga can end up mostly white. It is like the bird has its own built-in aging clock. Named after the Cayuga people of New York's Finger Lakes region, this was actually America's first commercial meat duck before the pekin arrived in the 1870s and displaced it. The problem was cosmetic. Dark feathers leave visible pin feathers on a dressed carcass, and consumers preferred the cleaner look of a white bird. But the meat itself has an intense beefy flavor, with deep red flesh that heritage meat enthusiasts prize. Cayugas are one of the hardiest breeds on this list. Developed in the harsh winters of upstate New York, they handle cold weather without supplemental heat. They are also among the quieter duck breeds, which makes them practical for properties with close neighbors. Fewer than 5,000 exist in the United States. That scarcity, combined with the black eggs and the striking appearance, gives the cayuga a kind of value that can't be measured in eggs per year alone. Sometimes the most profitable bird isn't the one that produces the most. It is the one that people can't stop talking about. There is a story from 18th century England that tells you everything about how seriously people once took this breed. In the town of Aylesbury, families raised ducklings inside their own bedrooms, in wooden boxes lined with hay, right next to where they slept. That is how valuable these birds were. And when the ducks were ready for market, drovers walked them 40 miles to London on foot. At each inn along the way, they would drive the flock through shallow ditches of cold tar and then sawdust, creating crude protective shoes for the bird's feet. That is dedication to a duck. The Aylesbury was England's premier table bird for centuries. The meat is exceptionally tender, fine-grained with a white skin. Most ducks have yellow skin. It also has a distinctive pale pink bill that old-time poultry people still consider the mark of a pure Aylesbury. Then in 1873, the pekin arrived from China. It grew faster, cost less, and the Aylesbury began its long decline. By the 1950s, only one significant flock survived in Buckinghamshire. Today, the breed is critically endangered. Most birds sold as Aylesbury's are actually pekin crosses, Finding genuine stock requires serious research and connections. For production purposes, the Aylesbury is the weakest profit case on this list. Egg output ranges from just 35 to 125 per year. Drakes reach 9 to 10 pounds, but they grow slowly compared to pecans. The breed requires more careful management, and finding pure breeding stock is genuinely difficult. So, why include it? Two reasons. First, there is a real market for heritage breed meat. Chefs and food enthusiasts who care about culinary tradition and flavor will pay premium prices for a genuine Aylesbury. In the right market, high-end restaurants, specialty butchers, farm-to-table operations, that premium can be substantial. Second, conservation breeding itself can be profitable. Purebred Aylesbury hatching eggs and ducklings command high prices precisely because the breed is so rare. If you have the patience and the knowledge to maintain a pure breeding flock, you are preserving something irreplaceable, and people will pay for that. Beatrix Potter's Jemima Puddle Duck, published in 1908, is an Aylesbury. The town's coat of arms features the breed. There is a shopping center called Duck Farm Court. An entire community's identity is wrapped up in this bird. The Aylesbury is not for everyone, it is not for beginners, and it is not for anyone who needs quick returns. But for a producer who understands that rarity has value and that some things are worth preserving, it offers a path that no other breed on this list can match. The Rouen looks exactly like a mallard. Same gorgeous green head on the drakes, same brown mottling on the hens, same coloring from beak to tail. The difference? A Rouen is roughly twice the size and can't fly. Think of it as a mallard that traded its wings for a bigger frame and stayed home to work. But here is something most people don't realize. There are two completely different types of Rouen, and picking the wrong one is an expensive mistake. Production Rouen are the practical choice. 6 to 8 pounds active, decent foragers, and they lay 140 to 180 eggs per year. They are calm, quiet, and they grow at a reasonable pace for a heritage breed. Exhibition Rouen are a different animal entirely. These are massive show birds, 9 to 12 pounds, bred for conformation, not production. They lay only 25 to 50 eggs a year. They grow so slowly it takes 6 to 8 months to reach full size, and the hens are so heavy they've been known to crush their own eggs. If you buy Rouen ducklings without specifying the production line, you might end up with exhibition birds that are beautiful, enormous, and completely impractical. The French have raised Rouen-type ducks along riverbanks since at least 1505, when naturalist Pierre Ballon documented them. The French consider the Rouen their perfect utility duck, and for good reason. The meat is leaner and more complex in flavor than pecan. That slower growth rate, the thing that makes exhibition Rouen impractical, actually works in the production Rouen's favor. Slower growth allows the meat to develop more fat marbling and depth of flavor. For the small producer who sells at farmers markets or directly to restaurants, that flavor difference can be a selling point. Not everyone wants the fastest, cheapest bird. Some customers want the best tasting one. Production Rouen are also remarkably long-lived. It is not unusual for breeders to remain productive for 6 or 7 years. That kind of longevity means more eggs, more offspring, and less replacement cost over time. The practical downside is growth speed. You won't turn Rouens around in 6 weeks like pecans. If your model depends on rapid capital rotation, this isn't your bird. And because they look like wild mallards, there can occasionally be confusion about legal status, though domesticated Rouens are legal everywhere. If you want a beautiful, calm, flavorful meat bird that works well on pasture and lasts for years, the production Rouen deserves a serious look. Just make sure you are buying the right type. I saved this one for last because you need to hear it, and I know some of you won't want to. The called duck is the cutest duck alive. It weighs 1 to 2 pounds, looks like a cartoon character brought to life, and will absolutely melt your heart the first time you see one. People fall in love with call ducks the same way they fall in love with puppies in a pet store window, instantly and without thinking. That is the problem. Called ducks were created in the 1600s in the Netherlands for one specific purpose. Hunters needed a duck with a voice loud enough to carry across open water and lure wild mallards within shotgun range. So they selectively bred for the loudest, most persistent quack they could get. That breeding worked spectacularly. A call duck hen will quack constantly at a volume that is genuinely shocking for a bird this small. One owner described the sound as small and angry. Your neighbors will hear them from inside their house with the windows closed. In a suburban setting, a call duck is a noise complaint waiting to happen. And what do you get in return for the noise? Almost nothing practical. They lay 25 to 75 eggs per year. The eggs are tiny, about half the size of a standard duck egg. Meat yield? There isn't any. A dressed call duck gives you less usable meat than a Cornish game hen. The American Poultry Association published an article warning that overbreeding for extreme smallness is creating birds that can barely reproduce naturally, with hens laying shellless eggs and drakes unable to mate without assistance. Show-quality call ducks cost $75 to $800 or more per bird. That is a lot of money for an animal that produces nothing you can sell and generates noise that might cost you your neighbor's goodwill. Here is the trap. Beginners see the small size and think small duck equals quiet duck. They imagine a tiny peaceful pet duck paddling around a backyard pond. What they actually get is a miniature air horn that produces no eggs worth collecting, no meat worth processing, and a feed bill that, while small per bird, generates zero return. Call ducks have their place in exhibition, in collections, and in the hands of experienced breeders with large properties and patient neighbors, and no need for production. But if you are watching this because you want to make your land work harder, because you want real food or real income from your property, the call duck is not your bird. Don't let cuteness make your business decisions. Choose the breed that serves your goals. Here is what I want you to take away from this. Duck eggs sell for double what chicken eggs bring. Duck meat commands 2 to 4 times the price per pound. Ducks resist disease better, handle cold weather better, lay productively for years longer, and some breeds can forage most of their own food. The market is wide open. Americans eat less than half a pound of duck per person per year compared to 100 pounds of chicken. That gap isn't a limitation. That is an opportunity. The small farmers getting in now are the ones who will own that demand as it grows. But breed selection is everything. If you want maximum egg revenue, start with Khaki Campbell's. If you want a self-sustaining homestead bird that raises its own young, controls pests, and produces premium lean meat, the Muscovy is hard to beat. If you are a complete beginner who wants a calm, beautiful dual-purpose duck that can reproduce its own flock, the Welsh Harlequin is your best entry point. And if someone tells you to start with call ducks because they are small and cute, politely thank them and walk the other direction. The chicken will always have a place on the farm. Nobody's arguing otherwise, but the duck has been underestimated for too long, and the people who figure that out first are the ones who will see the biggest returns. If this story changed the way you look at the potential of your backyard flock, please subscribe and like the channel. We are uncovering the agricultural secrets that have been hidden in plain sight for generations. Let's build a more productive future together. The next treasure of the homestead will be revealed very soon.